All right, so let's answer some questions on demand and supply.
Alright, so here we are looking at the beer market in Canada. We know that cider has fallen in price, and that's why people are buying more cider and less beer. So we want to show this graphically and also explain the logic for it. So for the graph, you would start with any shape of the market, which means the supply and the demand, and you would find your equilibrium, mark that, and you would write the name of the market at the top. This is kind of important. Make sure you write the name of the market at the top, because that kind of makes sure that you don't confuse things together. So we want to see what happens. We have to ask ourselves which curve is going to shift. Is it going to be the supply or the demand? Now look at the question. It says people buy more cider. Now if you're talking about buying, you are talking about the demand side. Now if they're buying more cider, what's happening to beer? This is about the beer market. If they're buying more cider, they're buying less beer, right? So what you would do is you would talk about the substitution effect from beer to cider, right? So once cheaper, people are attracted to the cheaper option. And in the graph, you would draw your arrows showing to the left side. Left means less. So any decrease is a shift to the left. And you draw a new demand curve and you label that D2. All right. So then you will get your new equilibrium with new price and new quantity. And you compare P1 and P2, Q1 and Q2. Right? So you also have to say what happens to the equilibrium price and the equilibrium quantity. So if you compare that, you'll see that the quantity is going down from Q1 to Q2, and price is also going down from P1 to P2. The reason is that there is a surplus. So because people are not buying beer, there is less demand for beer, and that creates a surplus. Because of a surplus, the price is going to fall.
All right, so here we're given the demand curve and supply curve for a particular product. And in A, we're asked to draw the demand curve for when the price is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So the first thing we want to do is figure out, well, for those different price points, what is the corresponding quantity demanded? And that's easy. We just plug in price of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 into the demand equation, which we're given at the top. So once we do that, we have that these are the points along the demand curve, and we just connect them. Okay, we label it D1. In B, we're asked the same thing, but for the supply curve. So we'd be doing the exact same thing, but now we're plugging price of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 into the equation for QS. So we replace P with the different prices we're looking for. If you do that, you'd get these points for your supply curve, and we label that S1, and we're done.
Building on the same question, we want to find the equilibrium price and quantity. Now, if you remember, equilibrium is the point of intersection of supply and demand. So that would give us the price of 2 and quantity of 6. So that would be the answer. Notice that the notation sometimes differ, P star and Q star. Sometimes they say PE and QE. Whatever, go with what your teacher or what your textbook says, and don't freak out. Now, what happens if the price is set at $3? Is there going to be a shortage or a surplus? Now, if it's $3, what you would have to do is you have to draw a dotted line at $3, and then you will be able to tell what is the level of the demand and the level of supply. So the quantity demanded here is going to be 4, the quantity supplied is going to be 7. Because quantity supplied is more than quantity demanded, that's going to be a surplus. By how much? We'll do the math. Find the numbers and subtract. So 7 minus 4 will give you 3 units in surplus. Again, sometimes you see D and S as a superscript, sometimes as a subscript, sometimes uppercase, lowercase. These are different notations, but they refer to the same thing.
All right, so the next few slides are going to look at two different markets and the events occurring in those markets, and we're going to use supply and demand to show the effect of these events. Okay, we're told to put a title on each graph, label the axes and the curves, and show the equilibriums before and after. Here we're told to label the equilibriums Q1, P1, but depending on what your teacher uses or your textbook uses, it might be QE, PE, Q star, P star. Doesn't matter, just go with whatever your teacher tells you.
Let's look at the case of sushi. In all these cases, you start with a generic form of supply and demand, and you write the name of the market at the top. Now, the challenging part is to tell which curve shifts and how. Here's where you need to know your shifters, right? Logic helps, but also you need to know your shifters. So if it's announced that eating sushi contributes to healthy immune system, What happens is that this has to do with the tastes and preferences of people. It's something that becomes popular because of the health reasons. So the demand is going to increase. How do you show an increase in demand? Well, you shift it to the right. So you draw arrows to the right and you draw a new demand curve and you label that. You find the new equilibrium and the corresponding prices and the quantities. All right, so comparing P1 and P2, you're going to see that the price is going up. Comparing Q1 and Q2, you see that quantity is also going up. Why? Because of shortage. So when people start buying a lot of it, there's going to be excess demand compared to the supply, and that's going to drive up the prices.
All right, so now let's look at the market for laptops. So again, we just draw the market, supply, demand, label the equilibrium, and label the market itself. And then the situation is that engineers develop better technology that reduces the cost of producing laptops. So what that's going to do, and this happens with better technology, it's easier to produce. There will be more laptops available for sale. Okay, so what that does is it increases the supply of laptops. We would shift the supply curve to the right, like so, and we label the new equilibrium. What is the effect here? Okay, well, if we compare the equilibrium prices and quantities, we would see that the quantity bought and sold increases and the price of laptops decreases. And this is because now that there are more laptops available for sale, there's a surplus, the price will come down.
This is an excellent test question. You're given a news excerpt and you're supposed to explain it and graph it. So let's see what it says. A seasonal shortage of avocados is making life difficult and much more expensive for some South Africans to get their green fix. There is presently a reduced production of avocados as they are out of season. On its website, whatever warned that it's experiencing supply shortages. Now your job is to interpret what this means using what you've learned in economics. Okay, so you start with a regular supply and demand diagram and you call that the avocado market. Okay, now you have to ask yourself which curve is shifting here. Is it the supply or the demand? And is it up or down? Is it right or left? Is it an increase or a decrease? All right, so if you look here, there's a couple of tips here in the text that will help you solve the problem. First of all, it says there's presently a reduced production of avocados. If you're talking about production, you're talking about supply, and it says reduced production, so that should be a tip. Also, at the end, it says they're experiencing supply shortages. So that's kind of a giveaway, right? So what's happening is that there's going to be fewer avocados for sale because it's the end of their season. So the weather is not productive for them. So what you do is you draw arrows toward the left. That means a decrease in supply. You get a new curve and you find your new equilibrium with the corresponding price and quantity. If you compare P1 and P2, you're going to see that the price is going up. If you compare Q1 and Q2, you see that the quantity is going down. Why? Because there's a shortage, right? Because of the shortage, the price goes up.